It's good to be in a room with you all. I'm Justin Skeesuck, and this is my BFF forever, Patrick Gray. And we are going to have some fun this morning. We're going to take you on a little journey with us. You guys up for that? Yeah. All right, well, very cool.
All right, good. So we kind of like to tell stories. That's what we like to do. We like to share stories about life, the journey that we've been on. And this morning we want to share about some specific moments that have helped shape who we are. These moments that are defining, that really have put us on the path that we're on today. And I think we all can point back to certain moments in our lives that have helped shape our decisions, who we are, maybe have allowed our stories to collide with the stories of others. And those are beautiful things. And so we're just going to tell you some stories about some of our favorite moments in life. Sound good? Yeah. All right.
So Patrick and I come from huge education families. I'll kind of give you a really, really quick rundown here. Both of our parents are actually, sets of our parents are teachers. I had my grandfather as he was a principal of an elementary school. My grandmother was my first grade teacher. My brother's a teacher. My sister-in-law is a teacher. Patrick was a teacher. Patrick's wife is a teacher. So, I mean, we can go down the litany of education. So, really, to be in front of you today is truly an honor. And, we have a lifelong history. We were born just over 36 hours apart. Same hospital, same small town, just outside of, or in Ontario, Oregon, just on the Oregon-Idaho border, not too far from NNU. Thank you, Dr. Purcell, for introducing us. And you know what? We loved growing up in a small town. It was awesome. Just normal kids doing normal things, went to church together, different elementary schools, but just loved being little kids doing normal things. And there's a picture of us, as you can see, of us growing up. But you know what? All was well for us growing up, doing normal things, just being kids. But just before my 16th birthday, I was about 15 and a half years old, I was driving from our hometown of Ontario to NNU to actually play at a basketball tournament. And a friend of mine was driving his truck, and we were en route to the game, and he ended up rolling it on the freeway going about 80 miles an hour. Completely walked away from the accident, shaken up, some bruised, thinking I'm through the worst of it. But about 6 months later, I started noticing weakness in my left foot. I was running down the soccer field, and my foot was flopping around, wasn't working the way that it normally should. So I brought it to my parents' attention, and they, you go naturally go see a doctor, and the doctor was completely stumped. End up going to see a neurologist, and completely stumped, trying to figure out what's going on with me. And by this time I graduated high school, went to Point Loma Nazarene University. Hey. Hey, Dr. Brower, good to see you. Just still trying to figure out what's going on with me. And just went through a litany, while I was in college, just going through a litany of tests and trying to figure out what's going on with me. I was first diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. That didn't quite fit. Went through some other diagnoses and finally landed on a very rare autoimmune neuromuscular disease called multifocal acquired motor axonopathy. Wow. Woo! Did you guys get that one? It's a mouthful. It is almost identical to ALS. So the prognosis is the same. My autoimmune system attacks my nervous system, and then my nervous system shuts down. So I can feel everything from head to toe, just my muscles don't work the way that they should. My life most likely will be cut short due to the disease. And it was basically through all of the testing I went through was triggered by that car accident I was in. The disease was dormant in my body, and didn't know you can have a disease like that. And it probably would have shown symptoms later on in life, but just started early for me. And so my prognosis started in my left foot. Like I mentioned, just kind of worked up both legs and stayed to my waist and below for quite some time. Graduated from Point Loma, lived in San Diego, met my amazing wife, Kirsten, and started a family. Just kind of kept working through that as best as I could. And I'm gonna skip ahead of you until, so my life changed quite again in the January of when was that?
2010.
2010, yes. I'm losing dates now. I'm getting old. January of that year, I started noticing weakness in my upper right shoulder. I was just kind of still navigating with waist and below, but this time around, the weakness spread quite rapidly. Within about 40 days or so, I'd lost about 60 to 70% of my upper body use. So my arms and my hands went very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. So, how do you eat? How do you go to the bathroom? How do you get your clothes on? You know, I'm a parent at this point. How do I help with my kids, help my wife, do things around the house? Life became increasingly difficult for me. And Patrick would tell you I'm kind of a half glass full kind of guy, kind of wired that way. But I found myself in a very, very dark place. The best way I can describe it is I found myself in a deep, dark hole. If any of you have ever been there or know of anybody who's ever been there, it is a horrible place to be. And this time in my life, I have never leaned so much on my Christian faith. Mm-hmm. Ever. Thank God I was raised as a Christian family, as Christ as a cornerstone, because I had never leaned on that so much. And I found myself really asking God, why is this happening to me? What is this path you have for me? What are you wanting from me? And sometimes God gives you these moments in your life where you have to really dig deep and you have to really start looking into your internal soul to figure out, Lord, why do you want me here? And I didn't know it at the time, but God had this amazing journey laid out for me. And I had to pull up my bootstraps. I had to figure my way out of a dark, deep place. And I did that through an immense amount of prayer, love and support of my wife and my kids, Patrick and his undying friendship, my family, my church family. I mean, it took a village to get me out of it. But slowly but surely, I was able to start finding my way.
Yeah. And sometimes those deep, dark holes come, they're thrust upon us, right? But sometimes we create them. And so same time frame, 2010, Justin's in San Diego with his family. I'm living up in Idaho with my family. And when Justin says he's a half glass full kind of guy, I feel like that's kind of like a little bit inaccurate because he's more the annoyingly positive friend that's it's always good. And you're like, dude, it's not always good. It's not always that good. You know, let's be real for once. And but you juxtapose that mentality against a phone call in 2010 where that, where the joy is gone. It's gone. Like, that's not the guy I know. And so, on the other end of the line is a guy who's scared. A guy who's like, life is not how he pictured it. And while he's dealing with this deep, deep, dark hole, I create my own because I become angry and bitter at God. I prayed for 2 years. I prayed incessantly for healing, for something to change, and nothing came, and all I saw was a God who failed my friend, time and time again. And I don't know how to say it otherwise, and I was pissed off at God. I yelled at him. We had one-way yelling matches day in and day out because nothing was happening. And I went down a dark hole, and my faith was shaken. And I still went to church. I tried to be the good father, the good husband, but where was God? That's all I could think of. Where are you in this? So fast forward to 2012. It's been 2 years. Justin, his wife, and kids come up to Idaho to visit, and we're having a good time, hang out with kiddos, run around the backyard, barbecues, this, that, and the other. We go to church on a Sunday, and after the church service, we're outside of the sanctuary, and a man comes up to Justin, and he takes him aside in this conversation. And those conversations that you witness that are kind of intense. They're not like anger-filled, but the topic is really important. There's something that is just something of extreme importance going on. And I could witness it happening. And as any good friend would do, I worked closer to eavesdrop because I was curious what they were talking about. And so I get in close, and I hear this conversation unfold, and this man asks Justin the question, if you could have your hands and feet back right now, would you choose it? And I'm thinking, that's the dumbest question I've ever heard. Like, are you kidding me? Of course. But Justin said no. I'm thinking, wait, that's the wrong answer. But in that same moment, it kind of struck me. It's like, wait a minute, I've been seeing this completely wrong all along. For 2 years, I've had the wrong perspective. Because while I was praying for a miracle, it had already happened. Because often, the greatest miracles aren't healings. It's the grace and dignity that someone can have to face an unknown future with the assurance that God's got their back. That is a miracle. Now, I kind of came to the realization that I'd made a battle about what I wanted. I was fighting a battle for what I wanted as opposed to what he needed. He needed my hands and feet. That was it. He had come to terms with this. It's like, dude, I just need your hands and feet. I'm okay with this situation. And I'd missed out on that opportunity to step in and press in and be what God had created me to be hands and feet for somebody else. In this situation, my best friend. And when you have that sudden shift, like, okay, I got a new perspective of what God is capable of doing in our lives, man, in a relationship like we have, ooh, watch out. God can do amazing things when you are just cemented together and you want nothing but his will to open up new things in the lives of you, your family, and the people you meet.
So that same year, as Patrick is he's working his way through his dark hole, I found myself in San Diego on a nondescript Saturday morning, had no idea that this moment would change my life. Just kind of minding my own business. My wife is doing what she so beautifully does, is keeping the house moving along. My kids are playing somewhere around the house, and I found myself just watching TV. Had a brief moment of peace, and on comes Rick Steves from Rick Steves Europe on PBS. Anybody familiar with who he is? Show of hands.
Yeah.
You? Woo! Isn't he the nerdiest travel guy in the world? Like, I love him. So, he's just on, and I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting, because I like to travel and all this. And so the episode was on northern Spain, Pamplona, running of the bulls, and this pilgrimage across northern Spain called the Camino de Santiago. And I was like, this is interesting. So I settled in to watch it, and I'm watching this thing unfold in front of me, and something inside of me I just knew. Heart, soul, mind, everything was just aligned. I call it a God moment because it's kind of God just pulling at me saying, you need to go do this. Wow. And I can tell you, way outside my scope. I'm happy laying on a beach in San Diego, much less traversing 500 miles in a wheelchair. So I call my wife into the room and I say, hey, hon, what do you think about this? And she said, if you want to go do it, go do it. And I'm thinking two things. Either she is really, really supportive, or she's looking to kick me out of the house for a month. Probably a little bit of both, but she was so supportive right out of the gate. And a couple weeks later, Patrick was now visiting me in San Diego for spring break, and we had a habit of visiting each other with our families. And so he came down, and I recorded the episode on my DVR, and I said, hey, man, I want you to watch something. So we sit down, and we watch it in near complete silence. And towards the end, I said, so, do you want to go across 500 miles of northern Spain with me? And he said, I'll push you. That was his response. Kid you not. That's exactly what he said.
Little did I know.
Little did we know what we were getting ourselves into.
You got those moments in your life where you realize how completely and utterly naive you actually are. Yeah, this is one of those moments. All right, by a show of hands, how many of you have heard of the Camino de Santiago prior to today? Okay, quite a few of you. Anybody gone on it? Ooh.
Hey,
okay.
All right.
Nice, all right. Good deal. So, for those that don't know, it's an ancient pilgrimage, dates back to the 9th century. Gonna give a real brief history lesson here. The kind of the idea behind it, the foundational ideas behind it, rest in the tradition that the bones of St. James, when they were discovered, were moved to the city of Santiago, and the cathedral that now is built there in Santiago de Compostela was built over his gravesite, and became a destination originally in the Catholic Church for many, many, many years. And over time, it just caught on where it became not only a pilgrimage for repentance, for trying to come closer to God. People do it for all kinds of reasons. And you have people from all faiths now. I mean, we met people on this journey from everything from agnostics to atheists, Buddhists, Hindu, Muslim, and Christian. Everything you can possibly imagine. But it's interesting that something calls so many people to rediscover who they are and to find a connection with God. And man, you meet a lot of cool people on this journey. The one that we took, the route that we took, there's lots of different routes you can take, but it's called the Camino Frances. It started in Saint-Jean-de-Pied-de-Port in the southwestern corner of France. 500 miles east to west to the northwestern corner of Spain, Santiago de Compostela. You stay in what are called albergues, or hostels, for pilgrims, so communal living, which is always an interesting experience. And it's a time where we completely unplugged, no distractions. And for day in and day out, we just rested in the company of God's amazing creation, humanity. Like every single day. Like imagine any one of you or I, not today because it's cold outside, but we spent 8 hours walking and talking. We would know each other better than some people we've known our entire lives, because in that kind of situation where there's no distractions, you get intimate real quick. You talk about the hard things, the beautiful things, the joys, the pains. And really, I think we rediscovered what God wants in each of us when it comes to relationship, whether it's with our husbands, our wives, our children, or the strangers we meet, is to really pursue one another diligently. But before we could really appreciate that, we had to get over the Pyrenees.
So day one, the first out of 3 mountain ranges we had to climb. I can tell you, as you'll soon find out, it was the most difficult thing that we have ever done in our entire lives. You leave Saint-Jean, this little French Basque village, absolutely beautiful countryside, and it is straight uphill all day long. 17 miles the first day. And there you can see my specialized wheelchair that I took. I affectionately describe it as a 3-wheeled baby jogger on steroids. With me in it, the weight of the chair and gear, it's about 250 pounds. So it is quite heavy going uphill. There's Patrick about to throw up. I think we're about 4 miles in. Mm-hmm. That's not a good start.
Yeah, wrong position to assume this early. This is not good. It's not good.
Our buddy Ted Hardy came along for the ride. He's a firefighter EMT, so it's just the 3 of us navigating this. Any hikers in the room? Anybody like to hike? A few of you, cyclists?
Yeah.
You know, there were some sections we went on this day that were steep as 30% grades. It is man uphill. It is slow moving for us, and so we're just climbing and climbing and climbing. And we're getting higher and higher and higher up into the Pyrenees. And we see this kind of a stone cross monument. And we're kind of taking a quick break. And I look ahead, and I'm like, oh no, that can't be the trail. There's no way that could be the trail. It is just rocks and boulders. I mean, there's no way we're getting my wheelchair over this thing. And so Pat and I and Ted, we all look at it and we're like, well, let's just get up to the base of it and we'll just work our way through it. And so we brought a packable sling had a little insight with this to carry me in case we had sections like this. And so Pat and Ted put me in this sling and start carrying me through this section. It took us about an hour and a half to go about 100 yards. So they pick me up, carry me about 15, 20 feet, set me down, go up, scout the trail, pick me up, carry me, rinse and repeat. And we're working our way up through this section and just inching our way through it. And about 3/4 of the way through this section, they lay me down in this grassy section between some rocks, and I'm just kind of taking a quick break, and they're up scouting the trail, and I'm just laying back with my eyes closed and just taking in the moment, just trying to find peace and whatever I could through this chaotic day that we're going through. And I'm laying with my eyes closed, and I hear footsteps coming up. And I open my eyes, and I look up, and there's a man standing over me, slapping me in the face. Some guy like shows up out of nowhere, and he is so happy to see me. And I'm looking at him like, hi, how are you? And he starts talking to me in French, but I don't speak French. I speak a little bit of Spanish. And so he starts talking to me about how crazy we are, how stupid we are. And I'm like, yes, we are. And he was just beyond happy to see us, just grinning from ear to ear.
What's cool about this guy, we learned through a short conversation that he is a farmer, and for the past, gosh, I think it's been 12, 15 years, he's been maintaining one of the albergues I mentioned earlier. Now this particular one, not really a hostel, it's actually a cave. It's up in the top of the Pyrenees Mountains where there's been rock and shale built up, and then there's like a wood door over it for pilgrims in case they get caught in inclement weather, because there are people that do this year round. And he was up there repairing this hut and sees these idiot Americans coming over the Pyrenees. But after he got done slapping Justin in the face and goes back to what he's doing, he gets about halfway back up the stretch to this little hut that he's fixing, and he stops, turns around, and with both arms up in the air, he shouts to us, "The impossible is possible," in French. The impossible is possible. One moment. Right? We will never see this guy again. Never. But the impact that words and actions have are lasting. They never go away. We got to remember that. And we needed this so bad because of what we were about to face.
So after this chaotic moment takes place, Patrick and Ted put me back in my sling, and off we go. Come around the corner, thinking we're through the worst of it, and we encounter this. Hundreds of yards of mud. Cliff on one side, mountain on the other, and there's no way to go around it. You can see there's a little trail off to the left where people can navigate it, but I had my chair with me. There's no way I could get through it. So, I mean, just some sections were as deep as about a foot deep, and we are just muscling through it as much as we could. And there's a little mini lesson in this, that sometimes the only way through something is through it, right? You just gotta go through the mud, the muck, and the mire in life. You just have to. And so we kept hitting stretch after stretch of this and climbing and climbing and climbing. And after 10.5 hours of uphill climbing, we finally summited. Here we are, we just crossed the French-Spanish border, now looking down into Spain. And you know, we learned a lot of lessons along this pilgrimage, but day one taught us one invaluable lesson, that you can pretty much do anything for a day.
And the problem with this lesson is that we figured this out on day 2, okay? We're not going to go through every single day, mind you, but day 2 is very important because it's supposed to be an easy day. It's supposed to be an easy day. The trail is wide. We've gotten to the town of Roncesvalles on what I like to say is the right side of the Pyrenees, because, man, I would have really preferred to not go over those things. And it's like 12, 15 feet wide in sections. It's hard packed rock and dirt, and it's smooth sailing, a little bit of undulation of hill up and down, but nothing crazy. And I have a lot of character flaws, but one of those is that when I get pretty proud of myself, I get a little cocky. And the lesson here is don't get cocky, because it never ends well. So I turned to Justin and Ted. Ted's pushing Justin. And I said, hey guys, we just did the Pyrenees in a wheelchair. Never been done before. We totally got this.
Famous last words.
So I trot down the trail, checking out where it goes. We know we have a few rivers to cross, some small streams, and the sound of shredding metal happens behind me as the front wheel to Justin's 3-wheel baby jogger on steroids suddenly becomes a 2-wheel rickshaw. The strain on the weld from the day before had been too much. And so now we have a situation to deal with, to say the least. But what's amazing about this is that we met some fellow pilgrims. They were older, so not in a position where they could help us physically, but they got us to the next location. We got food, we got coffee, and through their help and their wisdom, we actually get to the town of Pamplona, where we meet this guy. This guy's name is Ramon. Ramon is visiting his girlfriend at the counter at the medical supply store. We wind up there, we think they sell wheelchairs, maybe they know someone who welds stuff. Turns out Ramon, who's visiting his girlfriend, is a welder. Doesn't weld aluminum though, but he knows a guy So he calls his buddy. His buddy comes down to the shop, checks it out. Way too complicated for me, but I know a guy. And we get in these phone call race to find someone on the outskirts of town. We drop the chair off. And I asked this guy, this fabricator, I said, hey, can you fix it? He's like, I don't know. Come tomorrow and find out. Okay. We come back tomorrow or the next morning, and it's fixed. So yeah, like this cascade of moments, all these relationships, these people that we came in contact with, led us to a point where someone could fix this wheelchair so we could continue our journey. And man, it was incredible. It was incredible because, I mean, it was 48 hours from the time the wheel broke to when we were back on the trail. Like, I'm not sure we could have pulled that off in America, you know? Now, we're going to fast forward to day 28. But before we do, I just want you guys to know that, I mean, we had Ted with us, but Ted went home after like day 10. But we had person after person step in. Some were with us for a few days, some for a few weeks, some just kind of flitted in and out of our lives. But we were constantly blessed with people who saw that we needed help. We never asked for it, mind you, and offered it freely. We were loved by people from all over the world over the course of this journey. And it was because of their strength and their desire and their willingness that we actually made it to day 28.
So day 28, aside from the Pyrenees, is another day that we will never, ever forget. We have so many stories we could share with you. So feel free to, we have our book is out in the bookstore if you want to check that out to get into the details. But day 28 for us, give you a little context here. As you're on the pilgrimage, you go through tons of little towns a day, little tiny hamlets, but there are some major cities you pass through. And one of the major cities is a city called Burgos. And in Burgos is this absolutely beautiful cathedral that's right in the center of town, the old center of town. And Patrick we found ourselves in it, just kind of minding our own business, just looking at the architecture, you know, just trying to take it in while we're there. And we're just kind of milling around, and from across the cathedral, we hear, hey, aren't you Justin and Patrick? We're like, yeah, you know, and you're like, I don't know if we should answer that question, but these two guys walk up to us and they said, hey, my name's Joe, it's my buddy Richard. We're from Boise, Idaho, which is where we live. I relocated from San Diego to Boise, Idaho area. And so it's like, what? Like, no way, we're halfway across the world and two guys from our hometown are here. And so we got to talking with them and they said, hey, you guys need help along the way. We're like, of course, we could use help every day. And they said, no. Where do you really need the help? Where can we be the most effective? So we thought about it for a second and we said, well, we're gonna be coming up on our third mountain pass and it's called Osabrero. And it is incredibly difficult. It's not necessarily tall, it's just really steep. And even doing it on foot is incredibly difficult. So imagine pushing a 250-pound wheelchair up it. So we've had pilgrims tell us, you should probably bypass it. We had locals tell us, you know, take a taxi, go around. You guys, I don't know if you guys, you know, so we're kind of on the fence. And so we were talking to Joe and Richard, we said, well, you never know until you try. Right? So we said, well, let's just meet at the base of Osabrero and we'll give it a shot. If we need to turn around and go back, we'll go back. So that was day 28 for us. So it was just going to be us and them. And so we skip ahead to day 28 and it was going to be a very, very long day for us because we have to walk 11 miles, then climb a mountain. So it's just going to be a very hard day. So we walk 11 miles, get to the base of Osabrero at this little hamlet kind of village there's really not a whole lot there. There's a little supermarket, a little cafe, and a few buildings. So we see Joe and Richard there. We get reunited with them and give them hugs and high fives and whatnot. And we stop for some provisions because we're about to climb a mountain, correct? Right? And so we're resting. We get up to leave, and the entire cafe gets up. Everybody. We're like, who are all these people? And Joe turns to us and says, they're here to help you. I said, what? I said, yeah, we've been waiting here for the last couple hours, and as we've been waiting, there have been other pilgrims we've met along the way, and they asked, what you guys doing? And I said, we're waiting to get for Justin and Patrick. Justin's in a wheelchair. We're going to get him up Osabrero. So by the time we got there, there were 12 people waiting for us. So we meet everybody and figure out where everyone's from, and off we go. So we're going to show you some footage from our documentary, I'll Push You, that's out. So here we just left the village, and we're working our way up towards the trailhead, and the trailhead splits. We can either take the trail or a very, very steep road. And everyone turns around and looks at me and says, Justin, what do you want to do? And I said, well, life's never easy. Let's take the trail. So off we went, and the people that told us about it were not kidding. It was straight uphill. It was so steep, I had to be literally carried up this mountain. It took 6 people to carry me at any given time. While I'm being carried, the remaining people are carrying backpacks and up scouting the trail or walking sticks or gear. And as I'm being carried, somebody else they're getting tired, so somebody swap out and somebody else would come in, and we're just working our way up this mountain, and it's this beautiful human symphony of me being in the middle and everyone coming around me, and I'm just being pushed and pulled and manhandled, whatever we could do to get up this mountain. And the villagers are out looking at us coming through, and they're like, what is coming up? And by the time we get towards the top, we're escorted by the police. This mountain rescue shows up out of nowhere, and they're like, we're going to get you to the top. I'm like, okay. So we picked up people along the way, 17 people in total. Here we are at the very top. We came from the very bottom, way down there in the distance. I told you, it's a day we will never, ever forget. For me personally, it really cemented something that I had been struggling with for quite some time. The disease that I have is not a good one. It's forced me to look at life in a new light. And from the moment I get up until the moment I go to bed at night, I have to be cared for. I have to have people around me to get me through what I need to get through. That's everything from getting my clothes on in the morning, showering, bathing, bathroom stuff, eating, just people loving on me every single day of my life. My wife is my primary caregiver. She does so much for me. Patrick does so much for me in that spectrum. And I've had to rely on help pretty much every single day of my life. And it is a very difficult pill to swallow, because it's a good thing is humans to give to one another. But there's a flip side to that. In order for somebody to give, you have to be able to receive, right? And the lesson that I learned out of Osabrero climbing that day was that when you deny someone the opportunity to help you, you actually deny them the joy in life. I saw how happy it made people to get me up that mountain. Was it difficult? Absolutely. But it wouldn't have happened if I would have just said no, right? I had to let my guard down. I had to let people in and say, all right, I can't do this alone. I can't live life alone.
That mindset, we're talking about moments that are impactful. All of us have these moments in our lives that we get to be a part of. And we are given a gift, an obligation, I would say, if we take our faith seriously. It is not just something that we get to do. It is something that we're called to do. Is that we are the very points at which other people know God's love. Plain and simple. We're plan A, there is no plan B. We are the points where God will or will not know God's love, or others will or will not know God's love. And in Matthew 22, love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, your soul. When Jesus is being tested by the Pharisees over the commandments. Ultimately, just sum it up. He says, greatest commandment is to love God. And the second, is like it, is love others. And when you dig into Matthew 25, it gives a pretty clear picture with goats and sheep of what it looks like to love other people. And we put that stuff together. Loving God is loving others. Period. No exceptions. And we got to experience that day in and day out. Because of that love, that's how he made it. That's how he made it to Santiago. That's how he actually got to the destination. That's the only way we could have made it.
So day 35, one day ahead of schedule. We actually make it into Santiago, and I tell you, we were road weary. And when you're on this pilgrimage, you end at the base of the cathedral, right at the very front. And here we are coming into the square. And as we're coming into the square, we are greeted by many of the pilgrims that had helped us along the way. They were there to cheer us in. And I kind of got that feeling of that's what it's going to be like when we die and get to heaven. And as we're coming into the square, we're seeing so many familiar faces, except for that guy. I have no idea who that guy is. You'll see him in a second. He's a total stalker. But also waiting for us were our wives. We had not seen our wives in a month plus. And I tell you, to see their faces again was something we will never forget, because we love our wives and our families. We are family men. We married way out of our leagues. There's my wife, Kirsten, and Patrick's wife, Donna, who just said, go do this thing. They trusted us. They believed in us. And there's the stalker. There he is. I love it. I love it. But you know what? Just because we made it to the finish line doesn't mean that we're done with the journey, right? The journey continues.
Yeah. So I want to close with this. You're all in positions of leadership. You're all in positions of, you have a lot of influence. And I think really, regardless of whether we're a president of a college or we are doing admissions, we have influence because we meet people, we encounter people. We're husbands, we're wives, we're parents, we're brothers and sisters, we're friends. And you all have those moments, and you're going to have them from here on until the day you die, where you get to choose to be a place where heaven can exist on earth, or we can bring hell to the lives around us. You know? The Lord's Prayer, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Let's just stop there and know that we get to be a vehicle through which we can bring and make God's kingdom real. That's what you guys are in the business of doing. Mm-hmm. You're leading our future. Mm-hmm. And I know none of you take that lightly. But know that every single moment is an opportunity to bring God's love into the life of someone around you, whether it be someone you know or someone you have just met. Pursue those moments. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks.